Hello, my name is Jordan Taylor. I thought I'd make this video as I'm starting this YouTube channel to explain who I am and what my intention in starting Project Harrison is. Uh, so I've been through a few initiatives the past 5 or 6 years, and generally when I start the initiatives, people know who I am. They're my colleagues or they're people I personally know. Um, with Project Harrison, I'm thinking about longer timeline and a more robust content creation. So I thought, I'm going to have followers who don't know who I am, like, at all, and they don't know my background. So I thought I'd just make a quick video of who I am, my background, and my intention with Project Harrison. And I apologize for the poor quality of this video, but just getting it out there. So my background, I come from Vermont in the United States, a landlocked state. My family were farmers. I went to a maritime academy, somehow graduated, and worked for 12 years at sea, mostly on tankers, mostly international, and very often with foreign crews. So I have international experience. I came ashore in the late 2000s and became an operations manager for a chemical tanker company. And then after about 5 years, moved to California, which I'll talk about here shortly. And I was a technical manager for Valero for another 8 years or so. So I have a 25, 30-year career in maritime, and it's actually quite traditional. Like what I've been through is very common. Like people I meet out in the wild, especially in the informatics community, have a very similar career path that I do. So not unusual. I think for those who are not mariners, I think the focus is here, like my background is, I'm very much a commercial mariner. I'm like big ships. This is not recreational boating. This is not anything else. It's like I worked on liquid bulk on tankers for many years, and that's what I grew up with initially in my early career. I have a second background too, like concurrent background. And this is, I guess, more of just a passion for me generally. When I was a young person, my parents bought me a computer, a personal computer. This is typical of Gen X. Like we've grown up with computers. I still have it here. Actually, it's TRS-80. So I grew up, and I was very much attracted to these personal computers. So I started coding initially in BASIC, moved on to Pascal, C. Then as the 90s came about, it was the internet decade. So I got into CSS, HTML. Which I know are not coding languages, but that's what people were into then. Moved on to Java in the 2000s. And now I was doing this concurrently with being a mariner and moving ashore. Java in the 2000s. In the late 2000s, when I was an ops manager, and again, this is not unusual. A lot of people do this. I got very much into Excel, started doing formulas, working with Visual Basic. There's a lot you can, like, Excel is amazing. There's so much you can do with it. Like, I was making video games in Excel. But what happened in the late 2000s was that I created some workflow as a commercial operator that was actually creating value for a company. So this was a new experience to me. I was kind of just hacking around up until that point, doing personal projects and all that. But then I was like, oh, goodness, like, yeah, so value can be created by taking some workflow, expressing it programmatically. And that was a big impact to me. I mean, it was a lot of money that we were taking in as a result of a certain workflow that I developed as an operations manager. It was kind of like a gateway drug in a way, because after that I was completely spoiled. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to focus on this thing more robustly. So in the early 2010s, I moved to the mecca of software engineering, which was San Francisco, and just immersed myself in the community. So the first thing I did, which was actually quite important, because before this point, I was just sort of hacking around. I was making things, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I enrolled in a boot camp, General Assembly, and it was robust. It was a full-time boot camp. And in that, I learned about, at the time they call it full stack development, where you learn about databases, front ends, and back end logic. So I made an app. It was in Swift, and I published it on the Apple App Store. So I went through the whole process of creating a product and deploying it. It was a great learning experience, and more than anything, the instructors at General Assembly were basically like Twitter engineers and Facebook people or whatever. That in the evenings they just like taught once a week. So it was great because I was getting taught by people who really knew what they were doing, and I very much valued this. And after I was out, I was like, what language am I going to go with now for the future? Like Swift was cool, but it wasn't like, I don't know. Something was lacking with Swift. And I did some research, and I thought it was Python. I thought Python's pretty cool. It was human readable. It was easy to do. I was a subject matter expert, and I just wanted to get stuff out quickly. And I thought Python will get stuff out quickly. In the 2010s, it was a data science language for the most part. It's a little bit different now, but back then it was focused on data science. So I immediately locked into the data, like scikit-learn and TensorFlow and these different things where you could use different data points to produce outcomes. This spoke to me as a mariner because in the maritime industry, we use a lot of data, we combine a lot of data, and we get information and we make decisions. I thought, this is fantastic. Especially when I got into scikit-learn and I started training models. So you take a bunch of different data, you train it, and you generate an outcome, and then you measure its efficacy. And I was obsessed with it. I mean, this is kind of primordial in a way. It goes way back. When I was a little kid, the first thing you make when you're coding is maybe a text-based adventure or something like that. And you want the computer to respond to you. You want it to talk to you, hello world. And then the thing answers back, like, how are you doing? Something like that. So, 10-year-old me was really excited about things like scikit-learn, where you could take a bunch of data and model it. I spent a lot of years working with scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and these sorts of platforms and frameworks. No real good outcomes. And I think the reason why in hindsight is I didn't have access to enough data. And so it was mostly just a hacky experience in the 2010s for me. In 2022, 2021, something like that, GPT 3.5 came out, and I immediately said, oh, there's something here. A model that can reason, and this really spoke to me. So I've kind of dropped what I was doing and just went all in on the GPT thing. I was lucky at that time because I was already proficient in Python, and with GPT, you can pair code with GPT, and I immediately saw efficacy in this. So it propelled my development. I'm still consider myself a subject matter expert. I'm a mariner. I'm a nautical science person. So what GPT did was it just allowed me to express myself more robustly and more quickly for problems in the maritime industry. So I just want to also quickly just talk about, how mariners use data on a day-to-day basis and how they generate information and make decisions. Nautical science is thousands of years old. The whole point of nautical science is getting a big object from point A to point B without having a casualty. In 2025, we're really good at this. And a part of it is that we have, training's one of them. Like, we have the best trained mariners today than any time in the past. But also we have access to good data. This is through the benefit of the International Hydrographic Organization. So when we're on the bridge of a ship, we're coming into port, we know what the depth of water is, we know our safety parameters and things like that. Really good. We still have casualties, like in the news lately. There's been plenty of them, but not like it was in the 80s and 90s, where we were having big casualties like the Exxon Valdez in 1989. So we've done a good job. It's secretly the biggest win in our industry in the past maybe 30 or 40 years. Nobody talks about it, but it's huge. No one talks about it because nothing's happening. It's not newsworthy. But really good job from the industry standpoint. So GPT came on in 2021, 2022, something like that. Initially, people are like, okay, it's AI, it can reason. We have some opportunity here. And of course, people in the maritime industry immediately drawn to this, like, okay, we have some ability to use AI, AI foundation for decision making in the maritime industry. Fine. Like, I was in that camp too. I'm like, these models can reason in action. You can introduce data into these models and have them make decisions. Fantastic. I am still excited about this. The downside is, and this is kind of a general comment, it's not a maritime thing, is that along with these AI models, we're seeing like expansion and misinformation, generally networked misinformation, but also misinformation is making its way into high-risk environments. This is very dangerous. In 1989, at least in the States, I'm sorry I keep going back to the United States, but we had the Exxon Valdez incident. It was a big casualty. Open90 came about because of it, and now we have this like really great safety record in the States because of legislation and regulation. What I'm seeing now with this AI boom is that we may be applying non-deterministic models to high-risk environments without proper evaluation and vetting. This is incredibly dangerous. So the point of Project Harrison is that we have data, we have good data in maritime, and we have these really incredible models. Like, there's no doubt that LLMs, or language models, and different task-specific models in the past few years have been performing quite well. But we have to be careful about how we deploy these non-deterministic systems in high-risk environments. And we have a lot of work to do, in my opinion. I don't want to take away from people doing work right now, because I know there's an army of people just like me, mariners who can code, who are doing like incredible things and making progress in this space. But what Project Harrison is it's just, it's a direct reflection of my training, which is risk management. I always equate like mariners to risk managers. We do things that cause the least amount of risk in getting a vessel from point A to point B, and we do it really well. So likewise, when you see models deployed or AI deployed in high-risk environments that don't have proper evaluation and vetting, that's a problematic situation. As with all industries, there are bad actors. Maritime is particularly susceptible to bad actors because commercial maritime is not public facing. So it opens up the door to a lot of snake oil salesmen. People who come in and they say AI in maritime and give me money for it. So one thing that as somebody who's been a part of this community, I love the maritime industry. I love data science. And I care about the people and equipment and environment that are within this domain. I just want to see that what we're doing is done responsibly. So how am I doing that? The question is like, is one guy doing that out of his basement in California? Well, a part of it is like, again, this is not anything to do with AI. It's just like prior experiences to network people who know what they're doing. So getting community people together who understand the nuances of what we're trying to do. That's number one. Doesn't mean that they have to connect with me, but just getting people together, train data scientists, train software engineers, train nautical science professionals, licensed mariners, these sorts of things, and getting them together to make decisions. Super important. The other thing that I'm doing as a coder, like I love to code. Like it's a part of who I am. So it's very easy to get models together and introduce it to nautical type data and information and measure the efficacy of this. And I feel particularly qualified to do this because I was on this train well before GPT came on. So I understood AI and machine learning and this sort of thing, like before it became, sexy, so to speak. So I know the pitfalls, but I also feel like I know the advantages of these types of systems. I'm particularly excited about reasoning and acting. So using models as sort of a high level, and then using verified data and information on a low level to make outcomes and decisions, measuring accordingly. I will be, Project Harrison will be producing reports here in the future. Some may stick around, some may disappear, but the whole point of it is to introduce AI into these and measure outcomes and see if it's useful to the broader community. And hopefully, steer some conversation and some thinking around hey, can we create a framework for using these models in the maritime domain? How that's going to be done in the eventual result of this, not from Project Harrison, but from the IMO and the general community, has yet to be seen. But it is a future task that we have to address as a community. I particularly, speak to postgraduate students, PhD students, undergraduate students. This is the future. There's no question. People can say, "Oh, AI is a fad" or something. It's not a fad. It is the future, and if you could, focus on this in the future, you will be better served for it. All right, I'm going to wrap up here. I just thank you if you made it this far. Thank you. I don't know if anyone's going to watch this, but you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn anytime and be a part of our community. I'm especially interested in hearing from data scientists, computer scientists, licensed mariners, marine engineers, these sorts of people, so that we can start to form community and start to have consensus around some of these topics. All right, thank you very much, and thank you for listening to this. Take care.